We're also going to light a candle for Ukraine again to acknowledge that the imperialist mindset continues to threaten people and our precious planet. May the day soon come when all people choose generously over greed, compassion over aggression, creation over destruction. We hold in our hearts the people of Ukraine, honoring their courage and resilience, joining our spirits with theirs in solidarity. We pledge our minds, our hands, and our bodies to the cause of peace. Remember, as Lao Tzu taught, that peace among the nations begins with peace in our hearts. Amen and blessed be. And now let's join our voices together for our words of welcome, unison chalice lining, and sung affirmation. Welcome to you, old friends and new, young and old. You are an essential part of our celebration today, whether today is your first or your 1000th Sunday in our midst. We are stronger because you are with us. We are one people of many beliefs, identities, origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Body, mind, heart, and spirit, just as you are welcome here. We are hoping that everyone here has a chalice or a candle to light and something to light it with. Let's light our chalices together.
Good morning, I'm Pam Arbor Green. Will you please join with me as we say the words to light our chalice? In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and we seek to share.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung in every land by every tongue.
This morning, we will be participating in a special service created by the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, which highlights their current work, partner organizations, and is a call to congregations around the world to support their ongoing mission. The UUSC heads up our UU human rights justice work around the world together with a community of grassroots partners and advocates. This worship service is guided by the Reverend Jacqueline Brett, Ned Wright, and Aisha Ansano. We will journey around the world, grounded, encouraged, and gathered in justice to hear from our UUSC partners. UU churches around the world will be participating in this service along with us. Let us begin.
Greetings, everyone. We're glad you've joined us for today's journey, circling around the globe to meet human rights champions working in partnership with the UU Service Committee. I'm Reverend Jacqueline Brett, a member of the UUSC Board of Trustees, pleased to serve with Reverend Aisha Ansano and Reverend Ned White as one of your guides on this virtual journey. Grounded in Courage describes more than 70 grassroots partners the Service Committee works with around the globe, defending and advancing human rights against forces of indifference and repression. Gathered in Justice describes all of us here today, renewing our commitment to justice around the world. Our planet is in distress. Justice is absent from too many places. Courage is in short supply. We affirm that every person should enjoy the right to live free from the violence and oppression of racism, free from oppression, and free from environmental threat. And yet, we know far too many do not. Grounded in courage, we gather to hear from brave partners and renew hope for wider justice on planet Earth. We've chosen 3 songs to accompany us on this journey. As we embark, More Waters Rising will be sung. In a world where floodwaters are rising, fires are burning, and mountains are literally falling, what are we to do? At each of our 3 stops, Circle Round for Freedom will be sung. And I'll be teaching you simple movements to serve as a body prayer, reminding us that our commitments to freedom, to peace, to the well-being of our planet, to the health of each soul, and to the future of our children, all of those commitments originate in our bodies. Toward the end of our journey together, The Tide is Rising is sung, reassuring us that the tide is rising, and so are we, that the risk is mighty, and so are we, that the land is holy, and so are we, that the world is ready, and so are we. Welcome, every one of you. We're glad you've chosen to join us on this journey.
What are we to do? There are more waters rising. Hurricanes slamming the Gulf Coast, sea levels rising in the Pacific, glaciers melting at the poles, land disappearing from the Gulf Coast, land disappearing in the Pacific, land disappearing in coastal areas around the world. There are more waters rising. What are we to do? There are more fires burning. Catastrophic forest fires in California, illegal land clearing fires in the Amazon, uncontrollable brush fires in Australia, homes and whole towns destroyed, indigenous people's land and livelihood destroyed, millions of animals destroyed, thousands of people displaced. There are more fires burning. What are we to do? There are more mountains falling. Earthquakes in Haiti and Nepal, volcanic eruptions in the Caribbean, mining that removes mountaintops in Kentucky, millions rendered homeless, millions migrating as refugees, millions driven deeper into poverty. There are more mountains falling. What are we to do?
There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more fires burning, they will find their way to me. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. Oh, 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 to me. There are more mountains far in this I know, this I know. There are more mountains far in this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will wade through the waters when they find their way to me. We will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. We will wade through the waters, this I know.
I will walk through the fire, this I know, this I know. I will walk through the fire, this I know. I will walk through the fire when they find their way to me. I will walk through the fire, this I know, this I know. I will walk through the fire, this I know.
I will rebuild the mountains, this I know, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know.
I will rebuild the mountains when they find their way to me.
I will rebuild the mountains, this I know, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know.
This we know, beloveds, that this work is only possible when we do it together. Let us light our chalice now in the name of courage and justice. May its light, shadow, and warmth guide us as we do the work of justice together.
Circle Round for Freedom is our commitment and our prayer. As this song weaves its way throughout our service, we invite you to join us in a body prayer as the words are being sung. The melody will play now as I demonstrate the simple movements of the prayer. I invite you to join in as you feel ready and as you are able. I also invite you to not be too concerned about getting it perfect or right. Simply allow your heart to guide you.
Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us in prison. Circle for release. Oh, circle for the planet. Circle for each soul. For the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us in prison. Circle for release. Oh, circle for the planet. Circle for each soul. For the children of our children. Keep the circle
Now, let us embark on our journey.
The first stop on our journey is Burma, the country officially recognized as Myanmar. UUSC has been in partnership with organizations in Burma for over 25 years. Burma has suffered decades of discrimination, persecution, and violent oppression by the military government directed against ethnic and religious minorities, particularly the Rohingya people. Because of their Muslim faith and different ethnic traditions, the Rohingya have been denied citizenship rights in Burma. They have been driven from their homes and forced to flee as refugees to Bangladesh, Malaysia, or Thailand. In February 2021, the military launched a coup, wresting control from the duly elected civilian government. In the face of public protests since then, the military has killed over 700 people. UUSC is proud to work with 16 partners in Burma, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Thailand, North America, and Europe. These partnerships have three goals. First, empowering grassroots activists, especially women and youth, to lead civic education programs in Myanmar, in refugee camps, and throughout the Burmese diaspora, to build a culture based on universal human rights and an infrastructure for lasting peace. Second, urging and pressuring international policymakers and governments to pay attention to the most vulnerable when deciding how to provide humanitarian assistance and advance human rights and democracy, to listen to their testimony and to engage them in deciding how best to move forward. Third, supporting people in Burma in holding the Burmese military accountable for human rights abuses and crimes, for acts of genocide, for implementation of transformative processes of justice. This is a time of great peril, but also of persistent hope. There is evidence of new solidarity among formerly antagonistic ethnic minority groups and leaders. UUSC believes building strong grassroots movements is the most promising way to affect long-term change. In the face of formidable opposition, our partners act and mobilize. We believe that building their resilience will make all the difference. What can we do from across the world? Stay informed, stay involved, keep the flame of hope and possibility alive for a free and genuinely democratic Myanmar for all who call it home. Get to know your Burmese neighbors. Track legislation filed by Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey requiring the US State Department to make a genocide determination in the case of the Rohingya people. Donate what you can to continue 25 plus years of support for the inclusive Myanmar its people long to bring into being. Why does the Service Committee continue to circle round for freedom and peace in Burma? Because the inherent worth and dignity of every person is at risk in Burma. Because justice, equity, and compassion are being tested in Burma. Because the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part is threatened in Burma. Because our fundamental values are imperiled in Burma today, and hundreds of thousands of people are paying the price. Burma is where we are called to be. Listen now as Myra Dagapah from the US Campaign for Burma speaks to us about what's at stake for the Burmese people and how they are mobilizing to shape their future.
So my name is Myra Dagapah, a Karen activist from Karen State, Eastern Burma. I have firsthand experience myself. I have lived under the human rights violation committed by the Burmese military junta for more than a decade before I fled to Thai-Burma border and became a refugee. And so it was a living nightmare, literally. I mean, fear for life. I fled with just the clothes on my back, remembering back when I was a child, I wasn't even allowed to cry while walking among the adults, trying to catch up with them, because we all are in fearing of alerting the Burmese military where our whereabouts. And this is exactly what the people in Karen State and Kachin State are facing right now, fleeing for lives in the jungle. And also there were times when the military troops came to our village and burned down our houses on the ground. And we literally had to jump off from the house to flee for lives in the middle of the night. So, I mean, we're talking about the airstrikes right now in Karen and Kachin State, and that is what I had to experience when I was a child, remembering we had trenches around our school, so that as soon as we hear the sound of the fighter jets, we can just literally jump straight into the trenches. I mean, these are my experience that tells me that this brutality of the Burmese military junta is not over, and therefore my work is not done yet. I'd like to see a Burma's where everyone is embraced and welcomed, no matter their race, their ethnicity, or their religious differences. I do envision a peaceful country that finally has achieved true democratic state where the power lies with the people, but not the military. And also a country that finally realizes that inclusivity makes them stronger, and together anything is possible.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us in prison, circle for release. Oh, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole.
Next, we turn to migrant justice work across Central America. We believe all people have the right to safety within their homes and communities. But we also know that violence, corruption, and impunity have forced thousands of Central Americans to flee their homes. They have the right to safety, human dignity, and a process to seek asylum. And yet we know that migrants face dangers and abuses that are designed to deter them from their journeys. When they reach the United States, they may be detained, prosecuted, separated from family members. Even when they spend years building lives in the United States, they still risk deportation. In Central America, as elsewhere, UUSC focuses our grant making and partner support on grassroots organizations that are working for systemic change. We believe that connecting groups across Central America, Mexico, and the United States will help create a strong movement that is centered on the rights of people rather than on borders. The migrant justice crisis is deeply entwined with the climate crisis. Farms that have sustained families for generations are failing due to water scarcity, making it impossible for families to survive. Hurricanes are showing up on each other's heels, destroying entire communities. Oil and gas industries, responding to our increasing demands for fossil fuel, have long been destroying habitats and rivers and murdering activists. who dare to speak out. All of these things cause more people to leave when staying feels impossible. But there are groups all over Central America doing work to create systemic alternatives to what is going on. Solutions that are feminist, anti-capitalist, and anti-colonialist. Solutions that are creating and implementing grassroots ways of life that are sustainable and life-giving, that help make staying feel more possible. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the incredible resilience that has been built through these programs has helped so many people confront what is going on and helped prepare them to continue to move through the other pandemics that will continue to manifest. We know that environmental, medical, and natural disasters have been happening and will continue to happen. This is why partnerships with grassroots organizations, such as those fostered by UUSC, are so important now. UUSC's mission statement affirms the inherent power and dignity of all people. The power of autonomy to make decisions about their own lives and the ways in which they choose to live. The power of community to build new cooperative systems that meet their needs and allow them to thrive. The power of transformation to adapt in response to changing circumstances, to integrate ancestral wisdom with their aspirations for the future. And we Unitarian Universalists have power that is bolstered by our deep faith and commitments. The power of knowledge to educate ourselves about what is going on in Central America, to stretch beyond the stereotypes of shelters and borders. The power of radical imagination, to dream beyond what the world tells us is possible, to help bring the world we dream about into being. The power of compassion, to open our hearts and hands to engage in system-changing work for justice. Let us live into that power. Fundación Entre Mujeres, or FEM, in Nicaragua, works to strengthen autonomy among rural women working in agriculture. UUSC partners with FEM because of the generative, intersectional work they are doing in Nicaragua, creating alternatives that make it possible for people to stay in their home communities and to thrive. The powerful system-shifting work that these groups are doing is not merely an ideological exercise. It's about the survival of actual people. They are saving lives. I invite you now to hear from Cristian Guzmán Merlo at FEM.
Mi nombre es Cristian Guzmán Merlos, soy una joven campesina, feminista de la comunidad de Guazuyuca, del municipio de Pueblo Nuevo, departamento de Estelí, en el norte de Nicaragua, y soy una joven organizada en la Fundación Entre Mujeres. Actualmente hago equipo con 2 compañeras en la dirección de la FEM. En las comunidades donde trabajamos, muchas de ellas están en la franja del corredor seco, donde se puede expresar las situaciones climáticas como es las extremas sequías, pero también los excesos de lluvia. El año pasado tuvimos 2 huracanes que pues afectaron en gran porcentaje Nicaragua, y entonces pues es necesario trabajar en estas comunidades para hacerle frente a todas estas adversidades del cambio climático. Por eso es que nuestros programas apuntan a que las mujeres sean más resilientes, a que tengan comida, a que produzcan, a que rescaten las semillas criollas, pero también a que estén organizadas, porque estar organizadas también en momentos de crisis da contención emocional, porque es organizada cómo se lucha contra la violencia, porque también tenemos las secuelas del cambio climático que se expresa con las sequías, con las inundaciones e impacta en la seguridad alimentaria. Pero por otro lado tenemos la violencia machista que está latente en las comunidades donde trabajamos, y que por eso hacemos un trabajo fuerte de prevención con las defensoras comunitarias, con los acompañamientos a las mujeres que son víctimas de violencia, con el trabajo ideológico para que las mujeres seamos capaces de negociar. El amor y la sororidad entre nosotras las mujeres se manifiesta como cuando somos capaces de avanzar, de luchar, de participar en estos espacios que tienen que ver con recuperar nuestra autonomía, recuperar estos cuerpos, recuperar esa identidad campesina, ese arraigo campesino que nos ha despojado, que nos ha arrancado todo el proceso de la colonización. Demostramos el amor y la sororidad también con nosotras cuando somos capaces de avanzar juntas, y soy capaz de verme desde lo colectivo y no desde lo individual, cuando somos capaces de ver lo importante que es producir nuestra comida, producir nuestras semillas, alimentarnos bien y que las mujeres dejemos de ser las últimas en comer. Nosotras, con todo lo que hacemos, con nuestras estrategias de empoderamiento, lo que queremos realmente es impulsar este modelo diferente al modelo capitalista. Queremos apostarnos a un modelo con agroecología, con mujeres felices, con mujeres produciendo, con mujeres participando en los mercados, mujeres avanzando en su autonomía, mujeres libres de violencia. Nosotras seguimos avanzando en este modelo agroecológico feminista y nos da mucha fuerza el sentido colectivo, avanzamos organizadas con los comités locales y las cooperativas, porque son unos intereses colectivos lo que queremos, unas transformaciones colectivas en las comunidades, en nuestro país y en todo el mundo. Sabemos que no somos las responsables de transformar todo este sistema machista, capitalista, colonialista. Es una responsabilidad de todas y de todos, pero nosotras tenemos esa fuerza, esa resiliencia también en las comunidades para seguir luchando, porque ahora reconocemos nuestros derechos, estamos conscientes que nos merecemos una vida digna en el campo. Desde la Fundación Entre Mujeres, seguiremos luchando para transformar este sistema realmente capitalista, que ahora con las múltiples crisis nosotras estamos conscientes de que son expresiones de ese sistema, de ese monstruo, de ese sistema capitalista que es el dueño de las corporaciones, que es el dueño de la comida, que es el dueño de la vida y que cada vez va acaparando los medios de vida. Pero nosotras decimos, tenemos que seguir avanzando, organizadas, tenemos que seguir luchando para transformar este sistema desigual.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us in prison, circle for release. Oh, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole.
The last stop on our journey today is the Gulf Coast of Louisiana. We affirm that every person has the fundamental human right to food, water, housing, to live free from environmental threat. And yet we know far too many do not. The climate crisis is already upon us. We know that its impacts are already occurring and are disproportionately affecting the lives of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, those who have faced historical trauma, those living in poverty, people living with disabilities, the elderly, children, those with existing health issues, and other communities who have been historically marginalized. Tribal communities throughout the United States are once again losing their ancestral lands and are being forced to relocate due to their inability to recover from the repeated and direct impact of climate change. We know this to be a human rights and humanitarian crisis for these communities. UUSC has been working to support the rights of Indigenous peoples and their self-determination when it comes to climate force displacement. In Louisiana, we partner with the Lowlander Center, which has brought together 5 tribal communities and several neighboring African American communities living on the delta between the Mississippi River and the Gulf of Mexico. Each of these communities are affected by chronic and systemic negligence of the government. They are communities experiencing and chronicling rapid, unpredictable changes in climate that mark a new imbalance in their lives. An imbalance created primarily by industrial activities brought into the region by others, with billions of dollars extracted and but a small fraction returned. The UUSC works alongside community leaders as they collaborate to develop their own narratives and create their own innovations and solutions to present to policymakers about climate force displacement, rather than the assumptions and stories others make up about them, or decisions being made for them without their direct involvement. Our work is partner-led. Our relationship is based on trust. We work with these groups and others to connect the impacts of climate force displacement and environmental pollution in the United States to a number of human rights, including the right to food, water, and housing, the rights of Indigenous peoples and internally displaced persons, and rights related to extreme poverty, racism, cultural rights, and the environment. What is needed is congressional and executive action to provide a more equitable and just response to the human costs of climate change. The Legal Justice Coalition, facilitated by UUSC and the Lowlander Center, along with the Rising Voices Community Relocation and Site Expansion Working Group, have issued 5 policy guidelines to present to the Biden administration that represent a path forward to address the already present reality of climate force displacement, centering the leadership and self-determination of communities who are working each day to address the problem. We invite you to read about these solutions, and we encourage you to join us in advancing a shared agenda that prioritizes the needs and solutions of frontline communities facing the impacts of climate change. Finally, there are communities near where you are who are contending with these very same issues, and with industry and government. Communities that are consistently being disenfranchised. Find them, learn their story, and do what you can to work alongside them. We've learned from our partners that they want ready hands on the ground to do what's needed, to listen, to share their anger, to share their frustration, to share their hope, to be in solidarity with them. Listen now as Reverend Dr. Christina Peterson, facilitator of the Lowlander Center, describes to us the work of our partners in Louisiana.
This is our home, our planet, our family. Loving home means working together to make it stronger from all that threatens its well-being. Lowlander is a home, a place where we can share, discuss, strategize, and sometimes disagree with respect and love, focused on our shared goal of making positive change. Collective tough love is activism and healing. Love is core, love of people, living creatures, lands, waters, everything. It is a love of traditions and ceremony, establishing and nurturing loving relationships among human and non-human partners, lovingly expending our life energies to preserve and protect all that is sacred. It is participatory, teaching, learning, protesting, sharing living visions of love and justice. It is joy for seasoned activists and young newcomers partnering to address injustices, weaving an eco-social fabric rooted in love, leading to enduring social and environmental change, addressing historical and systemic violence, exclusion, unmitigated hazards in our daily lives that result in excessive land loss, horrific disasters, environmental racism, and closing essential services such as Native American schools. We boldly reimagine and build an inclusive new table, a shared agenda to co-create solutions to advance our collective liberation. Mother Jones said, "Pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living." Love is pausing to mourn and grieve for those who have passed unjustly, overcoming our own fears and reservations to fight for our children and for all those that are living under oppressed conditions. So we aimed a way of living where there is a return of balance between what we have and what we need, and the wisdom to recognize when enough is abundance. By building trust through connecting and supporting each other's communities, we problem solve obstacles in our way, tearing down barriers to open ways of peace with justice. With partnerships like the Unitarians, we are making love visible and tangible in light that can be shared. We commit the work of our hands to reflect the work of our hearts. Believing there is a wisdom greater than our own to rely on sustains us in this work. History and wisdom told by our people, the ancestors, the history of living a life of balance, respect, and gratitude, and living this way with a family we call Lowlander. Thank you so very much.
Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us in prison. Circle for release. Oh, circle for the planet. Circle for each soul. For the children of our children. Keep the circle whole.
Hello, friends. I'm Reverend Mary Catherine Mourn, President of UUSC. I'm so glad you have joined us on this journey to hear from some of our incredible UUSC partners around the world and to learn more about the work UUSC is doing with them to advance human rights in this critical time. Since our founding in 1940, UUSC has been bringing justice-seeking people together with a vision of a world free from oppression, where the dignity and power of each and every person is honored and their human rights are respected. Our global partners show us every day what it means to be grounded in courage, and they are calling us toward justice. I invite you now to be part of this call, part of this journey. UUSC is a member-supported organization, and our work only happens because of you. You can become a member of UUSC with a gift of any amount, If you can, consider becoming one of our UUSC Keepers of the Flame with a monthly gift in the amount that feels right for you. Our work is made possible because of your commitment to human rights and your generosity in service of that vision. Please visit uusc.org to make a gift, or you can click the link below. Thank you and welcome to this journey.
Thanks, Mary Catherine. Hi, I'm the Reverend Laura Randall, UUSC's Associate Director for Congregation Relations. In addition to financial support, there are more ways to be involved in the work of UUSC as well, from volunteering to activism to learning opportunities for your community. Sign up for UUSC Action Alerts by texting UUSC to the number 52886. Deepen your justice education and connect with other justice advocates via a learning experience with the UU College of Social Justice. Journey with a person seeking asylum in the United States through our Congregational Accompaniment Project for Asylum Seekers program. Wherever you and your congregation are on your path of advancing human rights in your local community and around the world, UUSC is here to help. Together, we can meet the challenges of today, grounded in courage and journeying toward justice. Let us now receive a benediction from our worship leaders, the Reverends White, Brett, and Anzano.
What are we to do about threats of climate-forced displacement and storms of indifference in Myanmar, in Central America, in Louisiana, and other places across the globe? What are we to do about fire, literal and figurative, ravaging our land, destroying everything in its path? What are we to do about earthquakes and cataclysmic social change, disrupting all that's familiar? Together, we will figure out how to wade through the waters to safer ground for all. Together, we will learn how to move through the fire, how to preserve land and life. Together, we will pool our knowledge and resources to rebuild the mountains.
Together, we will circle round for freedom. We will circle round for peace. We will circle round for release for all in prison. Together, we will circle round for the well-being of our planet. We will circle round for each and every soul. We will circle round for our children and our children's children. Together, we will gather round to keep the circle whole.
The tide is rising, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. The land is holy, and so are we. The world is ready, and so are we. This is where we are called to be.
The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task task is mighty, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The land is holy, and so are we. The land is holy, and so are we. The land is holy, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. Oh, this is where we are called to be. The world is ready, and so are we. The world is ready, and so are we. The world is ready, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. Oh, this is where we are called to be.
We extinguish this chalice that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light our paths as we leave this place. May it guide our way until we are together again.